How was this done, do we think?
Well, Andrew, I mean, it did really genuinely all start with a mobile phone. If you have an electronic source of power, you can attach an explosive to it, and then if somebody presses a button, either remotely or themselves, it can detonate. Now, the Israelis have done this in the past using a mobile phone, bombs and radios against targets, human beings in Gaza in the days when they weren't just dropping bombs all over the enclave. They also killed Imad Munir with a remote detonated explosive device in a headrest in Damascus, took his head off. And, of course, we saw the killing by remote control in Iran of nuclear scientists.
So this is presumably why Hezbollah are now using pagers, not mobile phones.
That's exactly why they're using pagers, not mobile phones, because they thought they were safer. Now, the number of mobile phones here, over 1,000. You're saying in your intro there could be many thousands of people have been injured. It's not clear yet. So you've got mass scale. So what this does to Hezbollah is raise the question, how is it possible to put explosive devices into so many pieces of equipment, into so many devices, or have the Israelis or the Americans or somebody, because of course the Israelis haven't claimed responsibility here, but have the Israelis developed the capability to turn a lithium-ion battery into a bomb? And if that is the case, every militant around the world who's opposed to the existence of the State of Israel or has posed any kind of threat to Israel will right now be tossing their mobile into the loo. Inside Hezbollah, this is a Hezbollah-specific communication system. They will now they will have to go to every single lithium-ion battery in their arsenal of up to 200,000 rockets. Many of them have batteries of some kind on board. Every communications device, every laptop. If you think in your own life how many batteries there are.
Absolutely.
It is a terrifying idea.
So this is a global issue, really. It's not just the Lebanon.
Well, it's potentially a global issue. It's intended to spook everybody and to deeply rattle Hezbollah, because Israel and Hezbollah don't want to escalate their conflict endlessly to the point of outright war. The Israelis have said we'll bomb Lebanon back to the Stone Age if it comes to it, and Hezbollah has the capability to hit and kill large numbers of Israeli civilians, even with the Israeli defences. So this is a way of undermining the very fabric of Hezbollah.
Sam, I want to come on to what might happen as a result of this in a moment, but I just want to, as it were, take one step back and think again about these devices, these pagers, because they're very, very small. They were, I read in the American media, actually delivered relatively recently. So everybody who's involved with Hezbollah has been given one of these relatively recently, but still, something that size, quite difficult to put enough explosive in to cause this amount of damage, and then to set them all off exactly at the same time.
Well, I imagine setting them all off at the same time. Yeah, that's just a global, that's a signal. Hezbollah will probably have, everybody go and get cabbages today. They'll have a program that could do that to everybody. So hacking the system isn't that scary from the Hezbollah perspective. Getting an explosive device into that machine is bad enough, and they will have to investigate that. Who and how was it possible that somebody put a bit of plastic explosive in every single one of these devices?
In thousands of different devices, and then delivered a lot.
Have they got the capability to blow up our batteries? And they don't know the answer to that. I don't think we'll ever find out, or at least not for a long time, and that is absolutely deliberate. You'll remember the sort of blood-brain barrier issue that came up when the Israelis and the Americans went after Iran's nuclear system with the Stuxnet virus that destroyed a load of the centrifuges designed to help purify uranium. That was the first sort of weaponized use of software in the real world. Now we've got the issue of, has that blood-brain barrier been crossed again in this new technology? And keeping their enemies guessing from the Israeli perspective, even if the Israelis weren't behind this, is absolutely ideal.
It's hard to see who else might have been behind this, Sam, I have to say. It wasn't the Liberal Democrats.
Well, I'm sure that they would like to be able to claim that level of talent, but perhaps it doesn't go with wet biking.
So let's turn to what the consequences might be, because, even if Israel or nobody else ever claims responsibility, Hezbollah will be pretty clear who they think's responsible. Might they then launch their missiles, their rockets against Israel, as they have been threatening to do for so long?
I think it's unlikely, because it isn't the sort of issue that boils blood. Their own supporters, in a sense, would tip their hats to this as a technological attack, a relatively small number of actual fatalities, I think sort of 3 or 4 at the moment. Many people in injured. So it's a symbolic and it's an intelligence blow, but it's not one requiring a kind of payback in blood. And also, Hezbollah is always looking for an excuse not to fully escalate. It's all about calibration. Just over or under a week ago, they had a plot foiled by the Israelis, allegedly to murder a former internal security officer working for the Ministry of Defense. So it's going into that tit-for-tat realm. The other question for the Israelis is, if you've got this kind of capability, why are we not seeing it being used in Gaza rather than the more ultra-violent response that they've had there? And I think that's going to be problematic for them.
I want to come back to the single most alarming thing you've said, Sam, which is the possibility that they're using the lithium batteries in these devices. Of course, all our mobile phones, as you say, and laptops and the rest of it, pads, have got lithium batteries. So the implication is that a security service, let's leave it at that, a security service could take out almost anybody in the world with the right signal.
Will certainly make them very uncomfortable. Don't put it in your front pocket.
I'm not even going to think about that. Sam, Kylie, this has been an absolutely extraordinary conversation. Thank you very, very much for coming in and enlightening me, even if you've alarmed me at the same time. Thanks so much for that. Let's talk now about what this attack tells us about how the world of cyber warfare and espionage is developing. Someone who can perhaps shed some light on this is Chris Burgess, who spent more than 30 years working as an officer for the CIA. Chris Burgess, thank you very much indeed for joining us. I hope you could hear some of my conversation with Sam Kiley there. But I'm going to ask you again whether you think it is possible that the Israelis or somebody have developed a way of turning lithium batteries in mobile phones, pagers and the rest of it into bombs.
I would say that that is a hypothesis that has some legs. I would go along the path that it was the lithium battery as opposed to putting explosives in each pager that was part of a purchase order. That to do that increases the level of difficulty to an extraordinary amount unless you're at the manufacturer. I do note that there was some discretion here. As I imagine, Hezbollah is not the only customer using the pager. And the pager is identified as being used by Hezbollah personnel were the ones targeted. We're not learning of pagers in Cairo or Athens exploding. So there was a good deal of targeting discretion shown here, which leads one to believe that it's a nation state as opposed to another organization,
actor,
if you will.
Say. Yeah.
Exactly. Another actor. Perfect. In my view, the supply chain got penetrated. Software may have been adulterated, designed to malfunction, causing the battery failure. Both are in the skill set of just about every intelligence organization and security service.
But this is something we have never experienced before. To be absolutely clear, you think that using an electronic signal of some kind to set off the batteries is much likelier than somebody disassembling thousands of pagers, putting in a little bit of plastic explosive, and then sending them on?
Absolutely. That is exactly what I think. How does this affect the use of our phones and pagers is a good question, right? So how secure are the supply chains? That's what Hezbollah is going to be asking themselves today, as well as other government entities around the world. How secure are your supply chains? Are you purchasing electronic devices in identifiable bulk?
Yeah.
But I'll give you an example. About 15 years ago, the Taiwan government bought drives for their computers. These are external drives. PRC learned of it, went into the supply chain, implanted software. All the drives were sending information back to China. This is not something new to corrupt the supply chain.
I guess the really alarming aspect of this, however, Chris, is that we all use mobile phones. We've all got lithium batteries in various devices around our person, around our homes. And if it is possible for an actor of whatever kind to use an electronic signal to turn that lithium battery, in effect, into an explosive device, everybody will be alarmed by that, whatever their background. Yeah. So this is a moment where the world changes a little bit.
The risk has always been there, is what I'm trying to tell you. Anyone who has traveled on an airline is asked when they check luggage, do you have a lithium battery in there? Yeah. There's been numerous occasions where lithium batteries in tablets and cell phones, in toys, overheat and balloon and explode.
I've had that experience when I've been traveling with a film crew, and you know, the lithium batteries in their cameras have been removed before we were allowed to fly, but not in a mobile phone or a pager or something small. That's what that seems to me to be different.
Right, and that's why we take them into the cabin with us as opposed to in checked baggage. And so, you know, you civilians, in the lead up when I was talking with your staff, it was, you know, innocent civilians surrounded by electronics. Do we have to worry? And I would say, not really. I don't see this being used in a widespread manner. I see it more along the lines of the zero-click phenomena that the NSO group and their Pegasus software created. Where they targeted journalists, they targeted government officials, where they compromised their phones so that everything on it came back to them. In this way, if you've got that technology, it's not a big step to be able to put in a corrupted or change the operating system so that on demand it overheated.
But that is it. Yeah, I get that. It's still quite an unsettling and extraordinary thought, Chris.
Absolutely.
Of course, at this point, nobody has claimed responsibility. Is it part of the sort of psychops side of this, if you are, shall we say, Mossad or whoever, that you don't claim responsibility and you leave the other side not quite understanding what hit them or who hit them?
I'm going to put my old intelligence hat on here. You have just disrupted whoever ran this operation. You have just disrupted the command and control of Hezbollah and their ability to signal to all of their personnel. Furthermore, you have injured a good number of those personnel. Now you've caused them to look at their entire supply chain to see where the vulnerabilities are. They have a counterintelligence nightmare that they're looking at. They themselves have said this is one of their largest breaches. So yes, Hezbollah is going to be affected by this. Call it a psych op, if you will, but it was also a kinetic physical op. And it showed that, and I believe it was Sam that mentioned that lithium batteries are in all sorts of other things. So it extends if you will, the area that the Hezbollah needs to worry about from just pagers and cell phones. Because Hezbollah was warning its people about carrying cell phones long ago, because it could be used for geolocation and targeting. So our electronics are vulnerable. They have been vulnerable.
Chris Burgess, as I said right at the start, this is an eerie but also absolutely fascinating story. Thank you so much for joining me.